This is a 30-minute mobility practice that is supportive throughout your cycle. So it is low intensity, it's gentle enough that you can use this from your menstrual phase all the way to through your luteal phase. So it's a great one to complement the strength training that you're probably doing. And it's a great way to carve out more space in the body so that you have greater access to your strength through deeper ranges of motion in things like strength work, maybe your yoga practice. It's a great way to integrate some of these deeper structures. So in today's practice, we have 10 different exercises. We're using the first round of exercises as a warming round. So no weight, we're moving slowly, connecting to the breath. We're using an interval structure of 40 seconds in the movement pattern and then 20 seconds to rest or transition. In the second round, you have the option of adding very light weight, something in the light to medium range. We'll use a single dumbbell for most of the exercises, and then we have our deficit push-ups where you'll use both dumbbells together. Our third round will then come back to the body weight pattern as more of a cool down so that you walk off your mat feeling refreshed, feeling a little bit more spacious and expansive for the rest of your day. You'll also need an optional elevated surface. I'm using a bolster for today, but you can use anything that you have in your home, something like a seat cushion, a couch cushion. Maybe you have a rolled up yoga mat with a soft blanket over the top, just something to elevate the upper back, head, and neck for our dumbbell pullover. That one, totally optional. You can still do it on the floor. You just won't get kind of quite as much range in the shoulders for that pattern. This one, again, I want you to take it slow and steady. Let this be movement medicine. So if you're using it between your split strength sessions or maybe after a total body day, I want you to really explore kind of where you're feeling your practice and look to balance from side to side. So we have a few unilateral exercises, and we're adding a degree of instability so you can really pinpoint where your body needs to create more space, where you need to create more activation, and where we need to create more mind-muscle connection. So I really want you to check in this practice, really pay attention to how you're feeling in your body and use your breath as that anchor to the present moment. When we can create more presence, it becomes more of that self-care practice, a moving meditation. So I hope it serves you in that way today. Again, no warm up or cool down because we have the complete practice from start to finish. And now let's begin. Let's jump right into this mobility practice for today. Before we do, just make sure if you wish to use weights that you have a set of light to medium dumbbells, and then you'll also need a rolled up yoga mat. I have a bolster. You can use a cushion. You could use a block, something just to elevate the head and shoulders slightly above the ground so that you have more range of motion in your shoulder joint. You can always do that specific exercise on the floor if you don't have these items at home. But we will go ahead and get started. Our first round is going to be a warm-up round where we will complete all 10 exercises with body weight only. You have the option of adding your weights in the second round, and then the third round will cool off by dropping the weights. Let's get started in about 20 seconds here. Our first exercise, we're going to come into a kneeling position. It's going to be a kneeling hip thrust with a tricep extension. So I want you to take your hands, press them really firmly into each other so that you feel the chest activate. You feel that those strong arms. You're going to bring the hands behind the head, wrap the elbows as close together as you can, soften the shoulders away from the ears. Let's begin. We take the hips down, hinge, tap the elbows, and then press the palms like crazy as you straighten the arms overhead. Fold it forward, bring the elbows toward the knees, and then press those arms overhead, squeeze. We want this to be a hip hinge, so focus on really anchoring the tops of the feet into the mat behind you. Tone the belly and the low back to support your hip hinge movement. We breathe in as we come down, and that strong exhale as we lift. Last 3, 2, and 1. We're going to take one foot forward into a half kneeling position, 90-degree bends in both knees. Then we're going to reach that same side arm overhead, nice and tall, soften the shoulders away from the ears. We're coming into a windmill. So you're going to take your opposite hand to the inner ankle of your front foot, or you can even bring the forearm down, the elbow down. The key here is we want to keep that opposite arm pointing straight up, so that you're actually rotating your body around the shoulder here. So this is as much about spinal mobility as it is in the shoulder. So I want you to feel that rotation happening in the shoulder joint. The hips stay square and even the whole time, so they're in that fixed positioning. And then we're just allowing the body to lower down. We've got 5 more seconds here. And then we'll come up and switch. We're coming to our kneeling side bend. So back to the kneeling position. We're going to have the arms overhead once again, pressing the palms into each other to create that activation in the arms. And then we're simply going to bend side to side. What I want you to avoid is crunching into the side waist and really focus on lifting up and out. Here we go. So I want you to press the shins into the mat, lift up and out of the pelvis. Again, we don't want this to feel like strain in the lower back. So you really want to be activating the side waist, the low belly. Notice the position of your shoulders. If they're kind of hunching up toward the ears, can you soften them down? You can always take your hands behind your head if that feels better in your neck. Gives you a little bit more space there. Otherwise, we're preparing for the weighted version by holding the hands overhead. Come back through center. We'll switch now to our half kneeling windmill on the other side. So you can bring your opposite foot forward. Now the other hand is upright. And again, we're just taking that opposite hand or elbow to the floor, working on depth, range of motion in the hips and in that top shoulder. Here we go. Take it down, maybe forearm to the mat and come back up. So you want to keep that top arm reaching toward the ceiling the whole time. Don't worry if you have a little bit of balance challenge. I'm joining you for this one. Days before my periods, I'm in the late luteal phase where balance can be a little bit tricky as hormones are in the process of transition. So they're in steep decline. So wherever you are in your cycle, just be gentle with yourself if maybe your balance is wavering a bit. Last one here and come up. Next up is our deficit push-up. So this one, you can have your weights just to give you a little bit of elevation for the hands. So we have that dumbbell push-up. I'm going to be taking this one on the knees, especially for the warming round, maybe coming up onto the toes for the middle round. And let's get ready. I want you to let the chest drop between the dumbbells and then squeeze the chest as you come up. So really focus on getting that range of motion at the bottom. Keep the elbows hugging in, keep the shoulders relaxed. I've got my weights slightly angled inward so that I can get a little bit of an A-frame shape with the upper arm bones. Rather than bringing the elbows straight out in a T shape from the shoulders, bring them back slightly. Get that powerful loading angle. We've got about 10 more seconds here, and then we'll be switching to our rocking lunge. Last one, stretch the chest and come up. You can set that weight off to the side once again. This time we're going to come into our half kneeling position. Same thing here, 90-degree bends in both knees. We're simply going to rock forward and then to the side. Let's get ready in 3, 2, 1. So I want you to lean forward. You can bring the knees over toes in this mobility practice. Step it out to the side and stretch across the inner thighs. So we're just alternating between that forward lunge and a side lunge. Again, you're looking to create separation between the thigh bones first in that neutral hip position, that closed hip position, and then the open hip position. Really working some mobility in the knee and the ankle as you come forward and breathing the whole time. Inhale through center and then exhale as you lean forward. Next, we will come to a seat, zigzag your knees. So knees to one side, we're coming into the shin box. So for this first round, I want you to keep your hands behind so that you have that support. Focus on keeping the inner edges of both feet down so they don't leave the mat. Let's get ready. And we're just switching. So Edges of the feet stay on the mat. They stay grounded. Your feet just rotate from the inner to the outer edge. We're moving through inner and external rotation. Keep your chest nice and lifted so you're not rounding the back. You can always use your elevated surface, your cushion, or your bolster if you find that it's hard to get that spine nice and straight. If you're rounding, sometimes elevating the sits bones and the pelvis can be very, very helpful, just to get you that little bit of range of motion while you work on greater depths of mobility. Last one. And then we'll come back to our half kneeling position once again for that 2-part lunge. So we come into our 90-degree bends. Again, we're going to be leaning forward and to the side. We've got about 5 more seconds before we begin that movement. Let's get ready. And here we go. Lean it forward, step to the side, open the hip, and come back. Again, this one takes just a few reps to kind of get into the movement pattern. Stay focused, stay present. And you're using that breath to connect, to map onto the movement. This practice can be supportive throughout your cycle. Because it is low intensity, we're just sort of slowly excavating more space in these structures that have a tendency to become tight. So hips, shoulders, spine, let's rest. We're coming into our alternating upward table press next. So for this one, you have a generous distance between the feet and the sitting bones. I want you to turn your hands so that the fingers are facing out. Hug the elbows behind you, lift the chest, draw the low belly in. One hand to heart, you'll press that up, reach toward the sky. So that hand comes straight out from the chest and reaches toward the ceiling. Hips and shoulders stay square. We're just getting that nice opening through the front body. A little bit of extension for the hips, and we're activating the glutes. Also opening the chest here, reaching up. So just imagining what this might feel like when you have a dumbbell that you're trading between hands. We're sort of rehearsing for that second round. And slowly come down. Next up is the elevated pullover. So here's where you can slide your rolled up mat, your cushion, your bolster. Really just needs to elevate the neck, head, neck, and shoulders. But I've got a bolster, so I'm going to elevate the whole spine. We'll come down, reach the arms straight out from the chest, and then take it overhead. Your feet stay grounded. I really want you to feel that expansion in the upper back. So you might also be in an arrangement where you're just elevating the head and shoulders. So I'll demonstrate that here. So you have just that little bit of a cushion so that you have a little bit deeper range of motion for the shoulder joint. So if you have just a seat cushion or maybe a rolled up towel, you're placing that under the head, neck, and shoulders. And slowly release. We'll take it nice and easy. We're coming back to our kneeling hip thrust with a tricep extension. This time, we're adding that little bit of weight only if you wish. You can take all of these rounds with body weight only and just focus on the activation and the space that you're creating. So weight is behind you, elbows are hugging in. We bring the elbows to the floor, come up, and then stretch those arms overhead. Try to keep the upper arm bones behind the ears if you can. Keep anchoring the shins and tops of the feet to the mat behind you for stability so that you can really hinge at the hips all the way and then press it overhead. Even just that little bit of weight, you might start to feel some heat accumulating. This is a great practice for circulation, especially in those structures that need it most. So the hips, the spine, and the shoulders. And release. Next up is our half kneeling windmill. So this one, again, you have the option of using the weight, but I want you to be very mindful of the kind of the sensation that's happening in the shoulders so that you're not creating any strain in that joint. Let's get ready. 90-degree bends in both knees, and then we come down. with the weight. You may want to slow that rhythm down just a little bit and reach. I want you to, whether you're using weight or not, really slow that lowering phase so that you can feel, you can articulate the rotation in the shoulder. You can keep those hips nice and square. You can bring just the hand down or lower the forearm and the elbow all the way to the floor. Last 3, 2, and 1. You can keep the weight. I'm going to swap out for a slightly lighter weight for the side bend. You can also go body weight only. So we're in that kneeling position. You can take the weight overhead. If you are, you can hold the bar and keep it in that horizontal position. Reach the arms overhead, squeeze the upper arm bones into the ears, lift up and out. So again, key points to look out for here are shoulders crunching up towards the ears, keep them relaxed, and side bodies long. I want you to lift up and out of the pelvis so that you can really activate those muscles that support the spine on either side. This is a great one for developing postural strength, and it doesn't have to be a huge range of motion. So just a slight side bend will activate those structures and give you a little bit of a stretch and rest. Coming into your second side, half kneeling windmill is next. So you can bring your opposite foot forward. You'll have that weight on the same side. You'll reach that weight overhead. We'll move in 5. Take a big deep breath and let's begin nice and slow. So this one, it's an open chain exercise for that top arm because that dumbbell is free to move. It's not in a fixed position, but I want you to imagine what it would be like if that position was fixed. So you're just rotating around that shoulder, keeping the weight stretching up toward the ceiling. And come up. And what this does is it adds a little bit of instability for that top arm. So you really have to engage your core, stabilize the shoulder blade, and come up. Next up, we have our deficit push-up. So you'll take your dumbbells. Again, I like to have mine angling slightly in. So you have that A shape in the arms. I'm going to try it on the toes. Here we go. So bring that chest all the way to the floor and then push it up. Take these nice and slow. I want you to focus on the range of motion in the chest and shoulders, that you can come just that little bit of extra height where you can drop below the position of the hands to get the stretch and then activate the chest. We got this for 15 more seconds. Nice and slow. I'm getting that quality movement here, quality reps from start to finish. Last one. And come up. Next up is our half kneeling 2-way lunge. So you'll set one weight off to the side, keep one with you. You'll take one foot forward into that half kneeling position. I like to have the goblet hold here so the weight is right at the chest. And let's begin. Rock it forward, step it to the side, and out. See if you can find that little bit of control in the balance where that moving leg is hovering. In the middle, you've got your core activation, the opposite glute working to stabilize and let you change positions. And also observe from one side to the other. For me, this side comes much more easily than the opposite side. And I think it has to do with the stability of the non-working leg. Stronger on one side than the other. So it might facilitate more of that stability in the movement pattern. Next up is your shin box. If you're keeping the hands behind, I want you to drop the weight. Otherwise, you've got the weight in that same position. This time, we're going to have the option of lifting onto the shins. Let's get ready. So you can lift it up onto the shins, keep the feet grounded, they don't leave the mat, and then come up. Lift onto the shins and rotate, internal to external rotation in the hips. Chest stays upright the whole time. So again, you can have the option of dropping the weight and just taking the hands behind you until you sort of carve out that space in the hips. Also takes a tremendous amount of articulation and strength in the hip flexors. So be okay with dropping the weight if you need to, with supporting this movement with your hands for as long as you need to. Come out. We'll come into our rocking lunge now on the other side. So get your body into position. Those nice 90-degree bends in both sides. So you should have sort of a little bit more effort if you've added the weight, but nothing too intense. Let's begin. So you're still kind of hovering right around 50% effort, maybe a little bit higher if you've added the weight. But again, this qualifies as an active rest day. We're using the weight not for muscle development necessarily, but just to provide a little bit more gravity, a little bit more resistance, so that you can maybe go a little deeper into your mobility work. Maybe get a little bit more feedback from your muscles in this practice. Next up, our upward table press. You can take the weight with you if you wish. Again, you've got the feet parallel, toes are pointing forward. That weight's going to come right to the chest. As you move through your upward table, you stretch that arm overhead and press it up. Backhand fingers are pointing out. Let's begin. Lift it up, come down, smooth exchange of that dumbbell. Switch sides and come up. If you don't like the exchange, you can always take the first 20 seconds on one side and then switch to the other side in the back 20 seconds. So we're coming straight from the chest here, trying to keep the shoulders and the hips square to the ceiling. I'm giving just a little bit of that toss of the dumbbell to facilitate a smoother transition. Last one. And slowly come down. We have our elevated dumbbell pullover next. So you can bring your rolled up towel, your cushion, your blanket, mat, whatever you have. Bring it under the head, neck, and shoulders, or even the full spine if available. Weight is coming right out of the chest. I want you to slowly stretch it overhead, tap that dumbbell on the floor behind you, and return. I want you to keep the sensation of hugging hip bones and low ribs together, especially as you move that weight overhead. Your lower back is going to want to arch to make that pattern a little easier on the shoulders. But instead, can you take the lower back out of it so that you have to work with range of motion in the shoulders and the back. Really feel the shoulder blades mobilized here. And rest. Slowly come up. You can set that cushion or surface off to the side. We have just one more round of those 10 exercises. I'm going to set the weight off to the side and come back to body weight only. So this is sort of our cooling round. We had that peak arc of our practice arc, and now we're coming back. So we come down, elbows touch the floor, squeeze those triceps overhead. So the thumbs touch the upper back, and then we press the hands as we straighten the arms overhead. Focus on squeezing those hands the whole time, really pressing them into each other, keeping the elbows in parallel tracks. We're not letting them come out wide. They're staying close to the ears. Notice the difference now. Do you have more awareness of, in this case, your hips in the hip extension? Now that we've dropped the weight, can you feel it more in the body weight practice? So you kind of can recruit more mind-muscle connection just because we had that little bit of weight and now we get to let it go. Half kneeling windmill comes next. So hips are pointing forward. Same side arm is up, and we simply come down. In this one, without the weight now, you can stay a little closer to that midline with your opposite elbow as you come down. So you'll have a little bit of rotation in the shoulders, but I want you to really try and keep the hips nice and square. So you should feel that nice deep stretch in the front hip, inner thigh. Let's take a moment, just turn inward. Just listen to the sound of your breath. Nice and easy, we'll come out, back to that kneeling position. Side bend is next. So in this one, you have the option of bringing the elbows out wide in your side bend, or keep that tricep and shoulder activation by pressing the hands and the palms firmly overhead. Let's begin. Lift out of the hip creases and to the side. This one you can play with a little bit more range of motion now that we've dropped the weight. But I want you to imagine, especially on the underside of the bend, really lengthening that side. We don't want to crunch and compress those structures, but we want to create that nice elongated position as it works on each side. Keep pressing the palms, keep the shoulders relaxed, shoulder blades really kind of supporting the upper back here. Last one. And release, roll out the shoulders. Windmill on the other side. You can bring your opposite foot forward. And again, I want you to fix the position of the hips so the knees are pointing forward. You've got that nice strong spine. We'll take same side arm up, opposite hand or elbow comes down to the inside of that front foot. Here we go. Bring it down. Keep pointing the fingers straight up the whole time. I want you to feel that beautiful rotation in your shoulder as you rotate the body around. So you're really fixing the position of that upper arm and the hips, and then we just allow the torso to move around those structures. Again, you probably feel a slightly deeper stretch here in that front leg, the hip, the inner thigh, maybe even the hamstring. Last 3, 2, and 1. We're coming into our deficit push-up next. So here you're using the weight just to give you that little bit of elevation so that you can drop the chest lower than the hands and get that little bit of stretch across the chest that you can then, from that stretched place, recruit the strength to push up. Here we go. Chest to the floor, feel the stretch, and push up. Squeeze the hands to the midline. Again, shoulders are relaxed away from the ears. Elbows are angled slightly back. Got that A-frame in the upper body. Listen for the sound of your breath. The more that you can tune in to where you feel the work, what's happening in your body, the more present you will be, and the more this practice will serve you as self-care, as a moving meditation. And rest, set those weights off to the side. Coming up next, we have our two-way lunge. So again, you'll come into your half kneeling position. And here I really want you to explore the range of motion. So be okay with letting your knees come beyond the toes. We're in this very controlled environment, no weight. So I want you to explore that mobility in the ankle and the knee. This is our cooling round, so you can slow it way down. Focus more on the stretch. Take your time. Even if you only get a few reps in each direction, I want you to feel that position in the hips so the pelvis, the hip points stay level. And you're using that range of motion in the front knee to take you to deeper levels with that lunge. And rest. Shake it out. Roll out the shoulders. Shin box is next. So again, for this one, you can take out that lift portion and really just focus on internal and external rotation in the hips. So being in our cooling mode, we've got the hands behind to help keep your chest upright. We're going to rotate to one side, keep the feet grounded the whole time. So I want you to feel that transfer from the inner to the outer edge and then outer to inner edge. Really try to keep that chest elevated. If you want, you can go hands free and just see what it requires without those pillars of support in the hands. Where do you have to use hip flexor strength and range of motion here? We're here for 2 and 1. Half kneeling position once again, coming into that rocking lunge now. Again, I want you to really explore comfortably. So we don't want to feel strain. I want you to feel that, just kind of that little bit of stretch in the knee, the ankle, the calf. Let's get ready. 3, 2, and 1. And you can hold your hands on your hip points to fix those 2 points in space. As you come forward, I want you to try not to tilt the pelvis. So a common action that we'll see is that posterior tilt as we come forward, where we're letting the lower back do all of the work. Instead, I want you to keep that pelvis in a neutral position. It's going to require a lot of stretch in the hip flexors, a lot more kind of safe range of motion for the legs and hips here. So again, as you come forward, keep the pelvis in that same position. Excellent job. Upward table press coming up next. You can place your hands behind. Again, I like having the heels of the hands hugging in and the fingers facing slightly out to get that nice stretch across the chest. We'll bring one hand to the heart, thumb to the sternum, and then we reach straight toward the sky and come back down. As you come up, you want your knees to be more or less over the ankles, so you have that nice, strong, loaded angle for the glutes, and you're not putting any strain in the lower back or the knees. So we have that powerful body position that allows you to tap into the strength of the glutes. As you lift up, try to keep the front ribs dropping in and down, so you're closing that gap in the low belly. Last one, and change. So you'll bring your elevated surface one last time here to support your shoulders and your head. Just make sure that your neck and head are supported so that there's no strain in the neck there. I did these sort of without proper alignment for a long time, where I was letting the head sort of hang. That puts a lot of strain on the neck. So I want you to be okay with letting the head be supported so you can really focus on just carving out that space in the shoulders. You can even kind of aim to touch the backs of the hands to the floor if you wish. Getting even broader depth across the upper back, the chest, and shoulders. Keep hugging the heads of the arm bones into the shoulders so it stays integrated. Last one. And slowly, nice and easy, we'll come up. I want you to take your time as you transition from that seated position. Maybe take a breath here, just letting your blood pressure kind of recalibrate. And then we'll nice and slowly roll through your standing forward bend, generous bend in the knees. And then in your own way, rolling up bone by bone, coming all the way up. Let's enjoy a huge breath together. Inhale. And exhale, let it out. That is your mobility practice for today. I hope that you start to explore how this type of work can complement your other strength practices, your other movement modalities, where the more space and kind of articulation, the more finely tuned we can get these different structures, the more the practice sort of unfolds. You can get more out of every rep, more out of your strength training. So I hope that starts to happen for you as you revisit this mobility practice throughout your training schedule. I want to thank you for showing up today and for letting your body be moved.